Welcome, beautiful Paris Saint Germain family. Paris Saint Germain are obviously set to face Liverpool FC in the Champions League. And for every PSG fan, Liverpool fan, and non-PSG Liverpool fan, in today's video, I'll be going through every single Liverpool player, having my thoughts about them, and at the end of the video, putting them together in a tier list. Starting off with Alisson Becker, the goalkeeper. He's been someone I've highly rated for a very long time, despite, the injuries he's had in recent seasons and so on. He's still a very top goalkeeper. Next up is Trent Alexander-Arnold. I don't rate him as much as most people because of his defensive fragility. Like, when you're a defender, you first defend, then you attack. So if you defend at least in a good way, then we can start hyping up your offensive stuff. But when you can't do your primary job in a good way, it's very hard for me to overhype. And even the offensive stuff, this season has been not the same Trent as some other previous seasons. And even offensively, it's more moments rather than consistent stuff from Trent Alexander-Arnold. Still a good player, but don't rate him as highly as most people. Next up is Virgil van Dijk. I think after he got that injury, that ACL, I didn't think he would come back as strongly. He's obviously not as good as he was pre the injury, but he's still a top player. Probably the best centre-back in the world. Next up is Ibrahima Konate, a player that Paris Saint Germain are interested in, heavily linked with. Great player. I think him and Van Dijk, a great centre-back partnership. Konate is a top player, especially when I see him with France as well, both in the Euros and the World Cup. He always performs at a high level. Next up is Joe Gomez. I haven't seen that much of him, but from what I know, he's way past his best. And even when, he was rated, he wasn't even that good. We got to be honest. Bradley. I remember the Madrid-Liverpool game. Not much stuff impressed me from the Liverpool game, but Bradley definitely impressed me from Liverpool. I think he can potentially take one of the fullback spots. He was a right back in that game. I don't think he's most likely a right back. He looks like a good talent. Next up is Tsimikas, a good rotation player. That's about it. Robertson, absolutely washed. Yeah, that's the only thing I can say about him. I think the only reason he's starting is because, everything is done for Liverpool, the experience he brings, but as a football player, he's not that level anymore. Next up is Kelleher, probably one of the best backup goalkeepers in the world, alongside Lunin, Safanov, Pena, and so on. And whenever Liverpool have needed him, he has definitely stepped up for them. Kwancha, I think, trash. Next up is Gravenberg. He's been one of Premier League's best midfielders this season. Also good in the UCL. I do sometimes think he's slightly overhyped. The Premier League PR is absolutely crazy, but he's been a very good player. I remember his time from Ajax didn't go that well at Bayern. They went to Liverpool last season and the club wasn't used that much, but this season has definitely started to reach his true full potential. McAllister, World Cup winner. When Liverpool got him for that kind of a steal, I knew this was going to be a great signing for Liverpool FC, and he's been a very great player for Liverpool FC. Next up is Szoboszlai. I think the idea of Szoboszlai is better than the player Szoboszlai. I think the idea, the moments when you saw that free kick he scored when he was at Leipzig, but he's just not that player. Next up is Endo. I'm going to be honest, I've barely seen him, and what I think his job is just to come in towards the end of games and, defend, run around a bit, just like in Ugarte, a worse version of Ugarte. Curtis Jones, decent to good player, but obviously he came up through the ranks, had a lot of potential. I remember that goal he scored versus Everton, but hasn't really, cemented his place as a starter or being even close to reach that full potential. Next up is Harvey Elliott. I would compare him a bit to Curtis Jones. He's still not cemented himself. He's still young, but yeah. Next up is Luis Diaz. Started off this season brilliantly, then started dipping a bit. But I've always rated Luis Diaz, but from what I've heard, it was a certain injury he received at Porto towards the end. And he hasn't just been the same since then. Still a very good player. Next up is Chiesa, Saudi. Next up is Mohamed Salah. And look, I will take my agenda, put it to the side. The reason I have an agenda is because what everyone says about Mohamed Salah. So I have to be against that. That's what an agenda is. And I just can't take anyone seriously when they say compare Salah to a Neymar or even Hazard. I don't think it's a bad comparison. I still think Hazard is a better player, but that's not actually that bad. Especially with the numbers Salah is putting up. But even the numbers, I think they're a bit fugazi. I think his non-penalty goals per 90 is like 0.6, 0.65, which is still far away from, top goal scoring numbers, but he's still been crucial for Liverpool despite only scoring 3 goals in the UCL this season. It's mostly been in the Premier League, which, I have my thoughts about and so on. But I shouldn't be able to take anything from Mohamed Salah, who's having a elite campaign. Very efficient campaign. Obviously not as athletic, not as quick, not as good as he used to be, but we've never seen a more efficient Mohamed Salah. And I can't think of many players as efficient, at least in a league campaign, as Mohamed Salah this season. Next up is Cody Gakpo. That's how I feel. Between decent and good. Next up is Darwin Núñez. This is a player I actually rate. I just don't think maybe he suits where Liverpool want to play. Maybe he's just not that confident, especially now that where he's barely starting games. He's missing sitters every game. He just needs to move on, honestly. But if we're talking about his performances for Liverpool, mid at best. Last player we're going to look at is Jota. A bit similar to Gakpo. I think he's a good player. I think he has some injury problems as well. But again, between decent and good. And lastly but not least, Arne Slot. Good to great manager, honestly. I think coming into a club like Liverpool, after they lost Klopp, who had been there for such a long time and mattered so much for that club. And Slot coming in and, you can forget Klopp that easily. I think that's how good he has been. And it's mostly a mental thing. How has he been able to handle all of the pressure, go into the big games, both in the Premier League, sitting first, UCL, sitting first. I have nothing bad to say about Arne Slot. Here's a tier list. We have Alisson, Salah, Konate, Van Dijk in world class, Luis Diaz, Trent, Kelleher, McAllister, Gravenberch, and Bradley in good. Endo, Tsimikas, Szoboszlai, Gakpo, Jota, Núñez, Elliott, and Curtis Jones in mid, and Gomez, Quenesha, Chiesa, and Robertson Saudi bound. Obviously, these are not like ranked and so on. They're in every single category and so on. And that was my tier list and my thoughts about every single Liverpool player. Let me know in the comments down below. What did you think of it? And as usual, allez Paris.